the TIE Show, where we analyze the intersection between technology, innovation, and education. Did you know that technology transforms education and innovation? On the other hand, did you know that innovation shapes technology and shapes education? And education creates both the two, technology and innovation. On today's show, we analyze and unpack this intersection by discussing the necessary reforms for digital learning. I'm your host, Leah Mokeira, and joining us is our guest, Professor Elijah Omwenga. Professor Elijah Omwenga is the current Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and Student Affairs at the University of Kabianga. He's done his PhD in computer science and specialized in information systems. Besides, he is a seasoned software engineer with over 25 years of experience. Professor has published over 80 journals, and notably written 3 books. Besides, Professor is in the teaching practice. He's been a teacher to both undergraduate and postgraduate students. Notably to note is that he pioneered an e-learning system that was in operation for around 7 to 8 years in Africa. And this is why we have him as the best individual or the best intellect around to discuss the subject matter of necessary reforms in digital learning. Being the intellect he is, I cannot expound or exhaust much about him. And so I'll allow him to tell us more about himself. Welcome, Professor, and tell us more about yourself.
Thank you, Madam Leah, for hosting me in this live TV show at Kafunde.
You're welcome.
I feel privileged to be part of this great that is discussing a very important subject in education in the era of COVID-19 pandemic, where certain things have been suspended, and now we are in a new normal. As you already put it, Professor Elijah Omwenga, currently serving as the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and Student Affairs at the University of Kabianga, Baricho County. And my area of specialization is in information systems, and particularly the use of technology to empower learners, the use of technology to extend learning, and specifically innovative ways of dealing with this issue of technology-empowered teaching and learning. As you already mentioned, I hold a PhD in computer science from the University of Nairobi and a master's in computer science from the National University of Science and Technology, NIU. And I hold a Bachelor of Education degree specializing in maths and physics and computer science from Kenyatta University. And I've been in the profession of instructional teaching for over now 567 years.
Evidently, we have a scholar, an intellect, both in the technological world and also he's in the education world, so he best fits to unpack this subject matter. We're in the times of COVID, and these unprecedented times have necessitated a paradigm shift from normal work to virtual. Work is done virtual, online, churches, among very many things. And so education cannot be left behind. We need to have this paradigm shift to shift education from the normal to the e-learning system. And so, Professor, what is your take in introducing education, an e-learning system of education in both institutions of higher learning, in both primary and secondary schools?
Thank you, Leah, for that very good question. And I look at it from 2 perspectives. In the first instance, we are looking at curriculum for digital education, curriculum for digital literacy. And here we say there is need for us to have sufficient curriculum well developed at various levels to empower those who are involved in the space of teaching. So that's one. Digital literacy here means people who are teaching using technology, they should be able to use it well, develop the necessary materials that are adequately geared to what the various levels. The second aspect of the question is about the delivery of this content, delivery of the content using various technologies which exist. And when you're looking at delivery, we're not only talking about media and vehicles, but also the methods which are used.
Yeah. So introducing technology into learning sector, there are a few things involved, there are different challenges, and there are different successes alike that we can get. So what is your opinion, or rather, what is the experience do you think in introducing this, given that you've already done that before in introducing an e-learning platform? So what is your take? What's the experience?
Thank you. Very good question. Yeah. See, technology frees, enables the learner and the lecturer to operate in another space. We are talking about offering teaching or content anytime, any place, anywhere.
Yeah.
So that is a great experience that you can imagine the learners and lecturers to go through. If you're looking at delivering using mobile technology, mobile systems, then you are empowering the people to have learning at the palm of their hands. If you're talking about a laptop in your house, you are empowering the learner and even the lecturer to engage in the process of learning at the place of their choice. If you're talking about delivery of content from outside the country, for example, while you are attending to other things in a conference, then you are empowering the learner to continue learning using this great resource of a lecturer or a teacher while you are doing other things at your place where you're found at your point in time. That's one experience that I can talk about. The other one is about the process of content development. In content development, we are saying here that it is not something that you wake up one morning and you're doing it. Content development is an art, a very specialized process where it must be well designed, well developed, well be evaluated from time to time, and delivered using the appropriate methods and vehicles. Vehicles here, I'm talking about things like platforms, things like the digital media that we are talking about here, and various methods that we know about teaching. The last experience is that one must be adequately trained for you to be an effective content developer and deliverer. If you don't have adequate training, then the quality of the content that you're going to give will be found wanting by your clients. And that will create apathy. And some people say, you'd rather give me a book to read than poorly developed and delivered content. That's a very important experience. Finally, I think in the whole process of content development and delivery, the evaluation of these materials that we are developing and giving our students, both the quality of these materials, sometimes we don't do quality assurance that is adequate before we give it out the learners. And that, in my experience in this space, indicates that some of the materials, some of the content we give our learners lacks in certain aspects of high level quality content. You know, quality content must have all the ingredients of the various objects that you need to assemble this content. That should be videos, that should be assignments, quizzes, and all those various things that entice the learner to be at that particular point in time to learn digitally instead of going and looking for a book. So there must be value addition in the content that we give. The final experience is about the methods that we use to evaluate the learners online. I think right now technology is well advanced that we can use various technologies like proctoring to evaluate students online. We can do online assessment and restore the data later on for evaluation and analysis and giving feedback. So those are some of the experiences that I can say I've learned over time as we implement learning or e-learning in various institutions.
Some of them strikes me in your answers. The fact that we want to introduce technology, that means students, even lower class students as small as maybe class 4, 5, are required to use some electronics. And the Kenyan system or the African system is such that we don't go to gadgets. We don't go with gadgets to school. Assume I schooled in a school where a mobile phone from class 1 to 4 is something that was untold of in school. So I will only access a mobile and iPad while I'm at home. How then are we going to mingle this now that we're used to children don't, or children, younger kids, leave alone the university level, younger kids don't get access to electronics?
maybe let me help this. Don't get access to electronics in what context, in what space? Let me just asking questions. At home, they are all the time with their phones.
Yeah.
At home, they are all the time watching TV programs. They are on the internet in their various homes. So the only time that you limit this particular young person is when he or she gets out of home and go to the school environment. That period of time is the one you are dealing with in this question. Now, in this era of technology, I think we must have a shift in how devices and how we're using them. A good device is one that is used for the purpose that it is intended for. If you're buying a child an iPad or a mobile phone, you want to reach the child at the time when they're breaking off in order to enable the child to come to you and take the child home. So you can buy a mobile phone that is available only at that time. You can also buy a gadget that will be available to the learner for purposes of loading content that will be used for specific objectives. So let us look at technology as an enabler, okay, in this particular context, and not something that is going to be looked as a hazard for purposes of enhancing the child growth. Technology is a good thing. It is how we use it. It's just like a gun. You use it for purposes of security, and if it's not properly used, then it becomes a lethal weapon, a lethal gadget that can cause havoc. So technology, well used, well packaged content will enhance teaching at all levels.
And so we are talking about discipline here, such that I as a student know that this gadget is specifically for me to read, look at videos online related to my classwork or something. So it requires discipline from me and a specific kind of discipline from the parents to ensure the student is doing the right things, right? So then
we're talking about even whitelisting. Whitelisting is a term that is used in technology space where you can identify specific websites or resources that should be made available to various learners at different levels. Even right now at university level, we talk about whitelisting of certain websites when we are subscribing bandwidth, so that students don't use the bigger resource of bandwidth for things that are not very, very important. And therefore, whitelisting is one approach that you can use to ensure that the resources we are giving the learners are from credible platforms or credible sources.
So then we get into the main subject of discussion. What are these necessary reforms for us as a country, as a continent in Africa to enhance digital learning? And we can group them to various sectors. They can be technological, organizational. So, Prof, what are these reforms?
I think that is the critical aspect of this interview here. The reforms normally fall into three categories. There are technological reforms, there are organizational reforms, and pedagogical reforms. And I'll expand on each of these.
Yeah.
Technological reforms here are to do with the devices that we must provide the learners, the empowerment that must exist for us to utilize these devices, the infrastructure that is required for us to implement digital learning. We're talking about bandwidth issues. We're talking about equity across the entire country. So technological reforms must cut across various sectors, not only education, but also those who are providing it. So must be reforms.
Besides, did you know that education creates technology and innovation
across certain parts of this country? What you have in mind is this power line is going to enable a certain set of families or village so that they have power. What's the reason for having power in that particular village or that home? It is to enable the people in that particular home access digital resources. So that's one reform that we must deal with. That we're not just giving electrical power for the sake of it, but also to empower the people access resources using this important resource. The other aspect of technology here is about in the institutional level. That brings me to institutional reforms. At the moment, you will find some institutions do not have a budget for e-learning, the budget for digital technology and empowerment of the learning process using technology. We need to look at this as an important critical component in the budgeting process so that we have e-learning or digital learning as part of the budget required for that particular institution, administration. The other point I should look is the training that you need to ensure that is available. Training sometimes attracts funding, for funding, and structured way of training the lecturers, training the teachers, and the students as well to utilize these technologies more effectively. More important at the level of institutional reforms is the top management. The whole process of digital learning must be driven from the top because it is a new thing, it is a new normal, and therefore top leadership is required to empower the whole process of learning. The last part, the pedagogical aspects. Here, we are saying teaching and learning must be enjoyed. How do you enjoy teaching? How do you enjoy learning? It means the quality of the content and the high status. It means the technology must be utilized by these people easily. You don't want a lecturer who comes and finds a computer there, he doesn't know how to operate it, or he can operate it but cannot be able to access an e-meeting schedule for a certain point in time. So it becomes more of a challenge and a frustration than an experience that one should enjoy. So that's pedagogy. And even the methods that we're using here. Pedagogy is the art of teaching, and the processes and methods involved. They all must form an ecosystem and support the learner, user support, learner support. We're talking about the constructive approach where we're looking at the learner being coached by the lecturer online or the tutor. So coaching and user support, learner support online is one important aspect in the pedagogical reforms. So that you're not just saying, okay, the content exists there on the e-learning platform, there is a Zoom class going on there, and when I'm done with my Zoom class, the class is over. No. The reforms here is you follow your students through an email, through some discussion, some chat group that you form online. That is the support we're talking about, pedagogical support and reforms.
Oh, that was deep. We have learned a lot of the necessary reforms. We have technological aspects, institutional and pedagogical approach. The question is, how do we adjust our curriculum to fit or to get into working together with the normal traditional setup of classroom here, there? So how are we going to adjust this curriculum so that we can mix going to the classroom and still learning online? Or are we having a whole shift from the classroom setup to an online setup?
That's a good question. I think it's good to ask it, although I can look at it as, let me put it this way. Reforms in the higher education, or even at all levels of the education sector, are to be driven by the outcome that you want, learning outcomes. The learning outcome, that is the competences that you want to have in place at all levels, at specific levels, is what will drive the kind of content, the kind of a curriculum that you develop. It's not the other way around. You don't change the curriculum in order to fit technology. No, technology enables you to implement the curriculum. And you can use different methods, different approaches to implement a curriculum that you believe will be able to deliver certain parts of content in order to achieve certain learning objectives. So let me unpack it further. Let us begin with the aim in development, or rather aim of a particular program. When you have the aim, you say by the end of this 4-year period, by the end of the 4-5-year period of primary education, you should be able to create or to develop a learner with the following competencies.
Yes.
And when you have very clear in mind instructional design, then you say, okay, fine, what you need at the various points, year 1, year 2, year 3, then you create the various courses and content. And each of these content will be driven by the learning outcome that you want. Develop that, you package it, and now you say, how do you deliver this content? Can I deliver it using practical sessions? Yes. Can I I deliver it using learning or rather lecture method? Yes. Could I deliver this by enabling the students to have field trips? Yes. Could I deliver this by having some simulation experiments, etc.? Yes. Those become various methods and vehicles for delivering this content to achieve the learning objective that you set out. So the learning objectives kind of drive the entire process. And digital platforms, whether they're learning management systems, whether there are various learning simulation models that you've developed, are to enable you achieve the objective that you set out. Therefore, you don't say we need to change the curriculum in order to make it amenable or implementable in a certain vehicle or learning methods.
We are not adjusting the curriculum. Technology is just transforming the
Absolutely.
education.
When we
delivery
review the
methods.
curriculum, we are not thinking about technology that we are going to use, but we will just have it in mind as yes, this content is amenable for easy implementation using these various vehicles and methods. The digital technology becomes therefore a tool, becomes a mechanism towards realizing the objectives.
Technology will transform education. Technology is just but a tool we need to use to transform education so that education becomes very user-friendly and learner-friendly. But there's this aspect of the fact that learners are all over the country, all over the world, and we come from different social statuses and different backgrounds. Practically right now, there's a child who's able to access some classes through Zoom, through Google Meet. They are able to watch some videos here and there on YouTube and learn. And then there's this one who doesn't have access to internet. He or she doesn't have access to a phone or an iPad or something. So how do we balance, while introducing these e-learning systems, how do we balance the fact that there are people coming from a background that really is one thing, and there are people who are already there, they have it. So how do we balance this for everyone to benefit?
We say technology leapfrogs. Leapfrogging means you join where you find the technology. If you're talking about somebody who used to have a mobile phone, issue mobile phones, which were, say, Nokia 2310,
Yeah.
and you stick with it for a long period of time, say 3, 4, 5 years, you don't want to change. All of a sudden, you're told the technology that drives that particular mobile phone is no longer available. You don't go and buy Nokia 3440. You buy the latest model of Nokia in order to join where everybody else is. So that's what we say, technology leapfrogs. So we hope over time, those who may not have access to the digital infrastructure, who may not have access to the devices we are talking about here, who may not have access to the necessary bandwidth, we believe that they will join. And therefore, we don't stop doing nothing and wait for everybody else to join. No, we continue working and enabling others to join into the fold of using technology for learning. And that is why in the higher education sector right now, we are talking about equity, a very important term. Equity means we don't leave anyone behind, but we try and lift everybody, move everybody together, and we have subscribed bandwidth for students, for learners. Okay, some universities have even paid bandwidth for the students, and others have already engaged in a consortium using Kenya Education Network to provide cheaper bandwidth using various providers. So that's one way of trying to lift everybody and travel the journey together. And as I've said, we must continue moving as we bring everybody to the fore. Recently, you saw the president launch the Google Balloons, which are providing internet services in some of the remote parts of the country. And that was demonstrated in Baringo recently when that first balloon experiment or balloon project was launched. And now there we are talking about 4G connectivity. And the students who are there in that particular region are already enjoying this great service. And we expect that more of these balloons, this kind of technology will extend to other parts of the country and enable everybody to access e-learning materials, e-learning resources, and come in the form of digital technology.
Equity is the ultimate goal, that every student every learner may find us or may get to join the e-learning system. But the question or the point is, you join the race and you, as wherever you get it. So you'll join the fold as soon as you can get it. All you need to is up your game, try as an individual to look for the necessary skills, because we are moving to the technological world, the e-learning sector. See you right after the break as we get practical on this. Professor has actually implemented an e-learning system, and he has much to tell you why it worked, on how it worked, and why it failed. See you right after the break, but do not forget to join the conversation on our social media handles, on YouTube, on the live chat, drop a comment, drop a question, on Twitter at Bafunde, drop a question, drop a comment, and lastly on Facebook, don't forget to drop a question or a comment, like and share. See you right after the break.
Are you a lecturer? Are you a tutor? Are you an instructor? Do you wish to make learning efficient and effective? You can now reach out to your learners online using technology. Introducing Bafunde. Bafunde supports trainers and educators in organizations, universities, and colleges to prepare and deliver digital content to boost interactions and learning. Visit our website at bafunde.com and register now. Bafunde, enhancing learning. Are you a lecturer? Are you a tutor? Are you an instructor? Do you wish to make learning efficient and effective? You can now reach out to your learners online using technology. Introducing Bafunde. Bafunde supports trainers and educators in organizations, universities, and colleges to prepare and deliver digital content to boost interactions and learning. Visit our website at bafunde.com and register now. Bafunde, enhancing learning.
Welcome back to the Tai Show, and we are going on from where we left it. I promised that we will get a practical view of this, and that is where we get into. Professor, previously you've designed, implemented a fully fledged e-learning system, and it worked for around 7 to 9 years. Could you kindly tell us more about it and what inspired you to develop such a system?
Thank you, Leah. I'm not sure why you're asking that question. Perhaps you must have Googled it. Let me attempt to explain. Sometimes in early years of my education at the master's level, I was inspired by one professor, Clement Zidon, who was a visiting scholar from Bristol University. And when he came to address us, teachers at the master's level, he introduced to us a new programming language, which is Java. And he recognized, perhaps in a class of master students, that I could do well in terms of learning how to use that particular language and develop certain products. Exactly. So he gave me a CD. The CD was by Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey is one of the implementers of several learning management systems and learning products. So Steve Harvey, or not Steve Harvey, but yes, he was Steve somebody. He has done a great job in terms of introducing Java to the world. I use the word Steve Harvey, but it's not Steve Harvey. It's another name, Steve somebody. So I used that CD, which was how to learn Java. And I learned Java on my own. I used Java to develop a fully fledged learning management system for empowering learners in community work, for empowering learners to come and collaborate in certain projects that they were doing at that particular point. I also used that little product to bring together lecturers who were collaborating in a certain project under the Sun Microsystems then. So there I was using Java to develop that product. When I finished my master's, I went to PhD. I was also encouraged by several of my mentors, Professor Waiba. And he said, I think you're a good programmer. Why don't you think about developing a system that would be used for delivery of learning? And that is how Wedosoft was born. Sometime in 2005, we fully developed Wedosoft e-learning platform as part of my PhD work, implemented it at the University of Nairobi under the leadership of Professor Kiamba, who encouraged me and said, this is a great thing. Then thereafter, UNESCO recognized as a good thing and asked me to implement it in several universities in Africa. I went all over Africa, Nigeria, universities in Ghana. I went to Rwanda and implemented this system there. It worked very well for a record of 5-6 years. But then, I was not a marketer. And I was doing it myself. I was the designer, the programmer, the implementer, and the evaluator of this system. We had a team of young people who were working with me. But then now, when I was given other responsibilities at the University of Nairobi as a director of ICT, I got engaged in leadership, and somehow the process of maintaining Wedosoft to keep up with the technology advancements suffered. And those who were entrusted to help me admittedly said that the code was a bit more complex and they couldn't keep it up to date. Somehow, therefore, as we call it, depth of a system here is when you patch it, you maintain it, you change it until you can't change any longer. It needs to be replaced with a new system. And that's what happened with Microsoft. It served its purpose, it was a great invention. We learned a lot, we had several training modules that we used at that time, and we developed, in my view, one of the most strong brands of learning where I was working at the time. And the footprint of Wedosoft and what we used it for during that period are reverberating across the globe even as we speak right now. Several models that we developed, like Quiz Integrator model that I've used some of the places right now, they have the substance there, the foundation of some of them are based on the Wedosoft experience that we had. So I can say it was a success to the extent that we were able to learn from that particular platform, to the extent that we were able to utilize some of the foundational principles that we have published. Up to this day, we are using some of them in various forums.
Professor Thamsa, we need facts to back such a
But unfortunately, I just like several other software out there, which become commercial products that generate income and enable people to earn a living from such kind of software. This did not become because of the challenges that have been mentioned to you. We should perhaps we should have learned better and create a bigger force to deal with this particular system than being a kind of one-man show business as it were.
One thing that is coming out, this project was solely handled by you. Sort of you did not involve other people, and so multidisciplinary effect was not part of the project. Do you think that had it maybe swapped it, would involve other people so that it would achieve that multidisciplinary effect? Would there be any change? Will it be that right now we'll be having it, or maybe still, as you have put it, it would have still died a natural death, a point where we can no longer improve or advance on it?
Thank you, Nea, for that question. Let me put it this way. The project was a success during this time, and it involved several people. We had education experts, we had technology experts, we had computer scientists, and I think the only little thing that we did not do was to think about the future and the evolving technology that requires that you move with technology as you implement these systems. I think that's where we failed, and we learned lessons from that. But it was well coordinated, and some of the people who were involved in this project, I can assure you, they are professors also out of this country, in Cape Town, West of Western Cape, Johannesburg. They are great people, and they were my apprentices. They learned from me, and I'm proud that this system was able to spark that kind of interest beyond what it is right now. Because human capacity, human development to me is bigger than even the products that we produce. Because the human capacity that was able to be created from this system, experiences we learned, will live generations beyond just the system.
Failure is part of a learning process, and from that they learned that using technology, remember, or rather ensure technology does not catch up with you, but something becomes extinct. But something to note is that we've learned from a practical aspect that Professor himself implemented, developed, and a system that worked. So you too can be the next innovator. All you need to realize is education has created technology. Learn it from Professor and keep on watching on the Thai show that you can learn more. But back to a major question. We said that we can introduce an e-learning platform, but the traditional setup is to use examinations to maybe check the understanding of the students. So swapping to e-learning, point in case we're using a laptop as a student and I'm doing my examinations, there are cases of cheating. I can swap from tab to tab and copy and paste from the internet or yet to revise. So what's the credibility that you would say we need for this e-learning to be okay?
Oh, thank you. I think the question you're asking is how to manage examinations online and assessment. Right now, I can say mature technology exists that we call proctoring, where you can develop a system that vigilates a class of so many students online without any interference from a human person. Proctoring systems works like this. When the time for doing an exam arrives, the students will log in, and the proctor, in this case, the system, will be able to guide the student through a process of engaging and confirming that you are alone in a room and the process of the examination environment is good. And therefore, you have an invigilator with you in your environment. So each student has his or her own invigilator in the form of software. Good. But then, of course, there is one invigilator over there who is managing the exam from the common front. So proctoring, in my view, gives you better results than even human invigilators. You have one invigilator in a room for 50 students, and sometimes the invigilator may wish to go outside briefly and then come back. The invigilator may miss to have eye contact with what's happening in a class of 50. So a proctor, in my view, gives you sometimes better results than having a human person debating. So that's one aspect of ensuring there's no cheating and the integrity of the examination process is good enough. Then there's also the issue of continuous assessment tests. Continuous assessment tests do not require integration. You take away, you do the exercises, you learn how things are done, then you bring back the results for purposes of evaluation. So in my view, we have mature technology systems in place to help us manage examinations online, but it requires a number of things. First is the need to change the policies that manage exams in our institutions. Because you must bring in the issue of technology explicitly as part of managing examinations. There's need for policy shift. Then secondly, the infrastructure required if you're looking at several students, 100, 200 students who are supposed to do an examination online, each student needs to have access to the technology. The lecturer needs to be well trained to manage these exams. The questions that you develop should be such that they're able to be performed online. So there are certain challenges that we must learn to deal with over time. And I believe in our country, some universities have already done examinations online. Over time, it will be a mature way of carrying out our exams online. That requires preparation, adequate mind shift, and training for purposes of succeeding in this particular aspect.
In relation to that, just before we proceed with the discussion, we have a question from on YouTube on our live chat. Simon Masharia is asking, what is the role of online assessment and the library in the digital space?
The role of online assessment
And the library in the
and the
digital
library.
space.
Good question. You know, the library is a brick and mortar aspect. And now we're moving toward digital libraries. We are talking about enabling the learner to access materials online. We are talking about repositories which exist, in various institutions, and even within or without, for purposes of access and enabling learning to take place. So we need both. The digital library is for you to access it from any place, anywhere, anytime. But then sometimes you need a physical library for you to look at references which may not necessarily be found and studied, for you to sit in a quiet environment and be able to carry out your work. And the library of nowadays must have specific designs, which discussed in another forum. But in terms of, you said examinations online.
Yeah.
Online examinations, the role of online examinations. I don't know what the question is all about, but I've already answered it by saying we can have online exams and an online assessment is possible.
Yes.
And with the technologies we have, I don't think there will be any challenges in successfully implementing integrity online exams.
So we're moving on, and we can see that credibility can be assured even in the online space. We just need to advance on the technology. In fact, credibility can be better in online as per supervision in person. So my next question is, the system, for instance, in high school we have subjects like chemistry, physics that require a laboratory. Besides, in the university, we have engineering courses where people go to engineering labs, mechanical engineering. And then we have courses like law, where probably online will be fitted very okay. They don't need a lot of interactions or experiments. So how do we get this mix of practical classes and just normal classes or normal learning in an e-learning online platform?
That's a very good question. And as we speak right now, most institutions of higher learning, if I may begin there, are trying to finish their semester in order to enable the students graduate to the next level. But the challenge is certain aspects which require practical sessions are yet to be done. The practicals here could be laboratory experiments, it could be field trips, it could be visits, it could be demonstration in farms. The practicals could also be carrying out certain models that must be supervised, and therefore you find that we have that little challenge that must be dealt with. And my proposal is that in the interim, in the moment, we have no choice but to have the students come back and finish their practical sessions when we reopen. And when that is done, then we are able to fully utilize the curriculum as designed and implemented to meet learning objectives. But then somebody has said, you accumulate learning lectures, accumulate them over a period of time, and then now you come to ask the students at the end, at the tail end, to do several experiments for different lectures which were offered earlier on. So you can see there's a little bit of a mismatch here. But then what do we do? In the circumstances, to me that's the best approach. But I appreciate that indeed the matching of the practical sessions to the lectures given earlier is a little bit of a challenge. We need to have the practicals going hand in hand together with the lectures at the time and general position in time when those lectures are given, in order to enhance and ensure that the objectives are realized. I'll give you an example. You teach students E is equals to mc squared by Einstein, and you want to indicate the relationship between energy and speed and all that, and you want the student to carry out an experiment in the laboratory, and you say you will do the experiment when you open. So you have to revisit that particular equation when the experiment is being done to refreshen the student's mind and have the experiment done. So there is kind of repetition and a little bit of not quite matching the experiments in the lectures. But in the circumstance, that's the best we can do. Secondly, I'm thinking about learning objects, experiments which can be done, or rather models and simulations of experiments which can be done and made available in a repository for utilization by various courses in different universities. What am I saying here? We have experts, a concentration of experts in a certain university, and these experts are good in certain aspects of a subject. They can come together and create a high-level simulation of an experiment, simulation of a practical session, and make these available for shareable purposes in a repository across several universities. And you can even imagine a student doing an experiment in chemistry, going into a virtual laboratory, and over there you're asked to carry out an experiment to deal with oxidation virtually, and you're given the pipette there, you're given the beakers there, and you're given the other materials, accessories required for you to demonstrate oxidation. All you need to do is to click on these various accessories and components and reagents, and then be able to interpret the results that you're getting virtually. So it is possible to do experiments virtually and online. But of course, there are certain things like word rounds, you can do that online. There are things like visits and demonstration farms, which you must actually carry out. So, but we must think innovatively on how we can supplement some of these online resources, these models that might be done, and supplement that with the physical experimentation that we may want to do. Finally, I'm looking at the future. I can imagine a future where universities will specialize in giving lectures. Universities will specialize in ensuring that examination processes are done well. And certain institutions will come up with high-end practical laboratories for various experiments. And they will be investing in expensive machines, investing in expensive technology, which may not be available for all the universities. And universities can hire those various institutions or practical centers to run the experiments with their students. So you will find there's cost effectiveness, and the students will utilize the cutting edge technologies to carry out their experiments. So you can imagine a win-win situation here. And this will be shared across various universities or institutions, and therefore the institutions offering these models will be able to break even because there is large numbers that you're dealing with. So I'm thinking of that as a future model on how to deal with experiments and practicals. Maybe not now, but in the future.
I look into that future too. It's creating employment for a whole other set of people, and besides, it's more effective since it's more practical now. Just before we proceed, we also have another question on YouTube from Ted Owinda. He asks, I know that we've discussed practicality of e-learning in Africa or in Kenya. Exactly practicality. You did. You are the first among the pioneers of practicing e-learning by creating it. So he is asking, has any e-readiness studies been conducted with regards to local universities?
A good question. Yes, several research has been done in terms of ensuring that we are ready to offer e-learning. You will find that some of these e-learning studies have been published in highly available journals. Some of them have been implemented when you're talking about e-learning readiness or technology readiness. And when you're talking about implemented here means universities or other institutions have adopted the recommendations of some of those areas that need to be addressed. I'll give you an example. One of the e-readiness studies, which was done by Kenya Education Network, Professor Neoli and his team, indicated that some universities lack the capacity to train people to offer courses online. And what did that do to universities? They had to train people. They had to engage experts to help people develop content that's of high quality, develop simulation experiments for purposes of utilization in their e-learning systems. So that one outcome that created that kind of action. The other outcome that I know is that they were looking at a spider model. You know, you go over, you log into the e-readiness system, and you're told you are level. You put in certain parameters, and it gives you the level in which you are in terms of e-learning implementation. Others were talking about user support or learner support systems, which are not there. So when you talk about learner support systems, we are saying here, to what extent do you enable the student or the learner access the e-learning courses in a manner that does not discourage the student from learning? And this outcome enabled us to develop various, online tools that come packaged with the content that we are implementing, so that before a learner gets into the system to learn, he or she goes through that online little course to empower the learner, know the mechanics and various aspects of navigating through the e-learning system. So those studies are there. That is for us to look for them and implement some of the recommendations.
Ted, I hope you've been answered. And just as we proceed, I know you have served as a representative to the World Forum for the Association of Teachers. So my question is that having served there, what would you recommend to African countries? You've been a representative for Africans, so what would you recommend or advise Africans now from an educationist point of view?
Thank you, Leah, for that question. The World FATE, or World Federation of Teacher Associations, which is headquartered in the United States of America, Ohio, is a federation, or rather is an organization that brings together the various teacher association federations across the world. All the continents are represented in the World Federation. And in Africa, we have our affiliate, African Association of Teacher Educators, and I've been serving as the president for several years now. And that's why I'm the representative of the World Federation at the headquarters in Ohio. What I have learned over the years in this particular work is that teachers must lift themselves at their own footsteps. What I mean here is you need to remember that at the end of the day, you build yourself as a teacher. You build yourself as an instructor. You don't wait for somebody to come and tell you that you need to empower yourself here with these skills. You need to develop this particular paper for you to enhance your area of specialization. Not at all. You empower yourself, lift yourself, and be able to reach where you want to be in the area of academia. The second experience I've had is that over the years, teachers need to engage in the community of interest here. What we're saying here is you must belong to a community in order to gain knowledge, to share experiences, and to learn certain skills and techniques required to make you an excellent teacher. Finally, I've learned in this particular forum, which I'm representing our community in Africa, that you need to engage in international fora. You need to participate in international meetings where you're able to learn and share minds. And this, in my view, need to be encouraged. I know sometimes people are looking for support to carry out some of these things, but I've said before, look for the support yourself, and you get it.
You've served in IT boards such as ICTA, and you're still the chairman of educational institutions such as Kabete Polytechnic. So what advice would you give out on people to relevant authorities or stakeholders on the link between education and technology?
I call it a triple helix approach. What am I saying here? You're looking at technology, you're looking at scientific innovation, and of course you're looking at education itself. So when you bring all this together, then you create a very powerful ecosystem. That's why ICT Authority and its products and services they offer in terms of giving direction and policy direction, whether in the area of ICT and what kind of products and I can call specifications required are generated in that particular authority. And looking at NACOSTI, National Commission for Science and Technology, which is in charge of setting the research agenda for this country. And they keenly looking at it enables the universities to pick some of the research items to carry out in their various institutions. So you can see a tripartite kind of support in this particular area. Therefore, it's been a privilege for me to serve in these boards because we have been able to learn the details which are required as I serve in my current area in education as a deputy vice chancellor.
This has really been an enriching discussion. I hope that my viewers have picked vital lessons. So evidently, e-learning is the next big thing in Africa or in Kenya. And who knows what will be the next big pandemic, or how will be the next big pandemic, or when would be the next big pandemic. So relevant authorities, relevant stakeholders, and learning institutions need to step up so they can adopt a digital learning system. And with that, education and learning would have been enhanced. Thank you very much, Prof, for sparing your time to be here and for sharing the beautiful insights. I personally, I have learned a lot, and I hope my viewers have learned a lot. So thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, viewer, for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get updates on the next show. Until then, stay safe.
Are you a lecturer? Are you a tutor? Are you an instructor? Do you wish to make learning efficient and effective? You can now reach out to your learners online using technology. Introducing Bafunde. Bafunde supports trainers and educators in organizations, universities, and colleges to prepare and deliver digital content to boost interactions and learning. Visit our website at bafunde.com and register now. Bafunde.